And about 15 years ago, a couple of things came together at the same time, I would say. It was kind of a serendipity, but it might have been more intentional than I realized. There was, across the national scene, there was much better research about prenatal development of fetuses up to the point of the birth of an infant, including brain development, and then particularly in the early childhood years of birth to age 3, much better research about brain development across all the different domains of speech and language and hearing and gross motor movement, but even a little social development and emotional development. So there was a legitimizing of the science of child development. So the research told us that that not only was child development going to play out on pretty predictable trajectories, month by month by month, but even more compelling statements like the fact that up to 85% of a child's brain is hardwired by the time the child reaches his or her 3rd birthday. Well, now that's a real, just grab you by the shoulders, shake you piece of information. Here was this great information that says there are these little clocks ticking inside children, all up and down, but mostly in the brain. And by the way, the best way to cultivate all of that is in an interactive relationship with an other, with a parent, with a caretaker. So it was part the science and part the interactive bonding attachment nature of little kids and the caregivers. Well, so there's that. And then at this agency, there was this unique moment in time where a handful of agency stalwarts, board members, longtime supporters, and just visionaries who loved the mission of this agency said, boy, wouldn't it be nice if we had a kind of an any baby, any family welcoming center kind of program. And by the way, let's call that Baby Bungalow because there's a little building we want to host it in that happens to be a bungalow. So what seemed like overnight, looking back, was this decision that turned into action to create a service out of this agency that didn't discriminate against families who essentially were fine. They were just nervous, or they were uninformed, it was first-time parents, that kind of thing. And it transformed who we thought our clients were. Fast forwarding to now, the end of 2014, what you would see is that we have taken the concept of any baby, any family, and embedded it in the way that we designed programs or solicited opportunities to expand or move in certain directions with certain kinds of services, so that there is no family who is ineligible for what we do. And I would say that that's significant. So those were some things that came together. Brain research means it really matters to start early, which, by the way, the early years are the highest danger times from the child welfare perspective, so it was very resonant with our mission. But also, this is when you get it right for kids to ultimately enter kindergarten ready to learn. And the absence of children entering kindergarten ready to learn is now one of the biggest challenges of our country. That, and then the Baby Bungalow concept to serve any baby, any family, has redefined who our client population is. I'll give you 3 good examples right now. And all of these trace back to that combination of decisions that happened about 15 years ago. One is our Baby Bungalow program that I referred to just a few minutes ago, and I would say that in the beginning, all we knew was we wanted a place where any parent, either expecting the birth of a child or who had an infant or a toddler or a preschooler, to be able to come and get information and get some social support, meet other families like them. We wanted to invite people to come to a place, and we had our ideas about 4 or 5 or 6 different kinds of groups or classes, that kind of stuff we could offer. I would say by the end of the first year of that experiment, we dropped 2 or 3 of those and responded to something else. And our biggest instructors were our parents who liked what we had to offer, helped define through a constant feedback loop with our staff, boy, this is great, no, I don't care much about that, boy, it sure is great to talk to that mom, which wasn't exactly where we thought our greatest hunger would be. But it helped us do a couple of things. It helped us figure out that whatever we offered, it needed to be no more than 50%. I'm completely making up this number right now. No more than 50% brainiac instruction on our part. Like we're the smart people who are going to teach you how to do the thing you need to do. No more than 50% of the time is that. But the rest of it has to allow for the interactive nature of families being with other families, kids being with kids, parents being with parents, caregivers being with caregivers, because that social interactive energy was so valuable to them. So ever since learning that lesson, no matter what we do, we always allow for that. We also knew that we wanted it to be inviting and fun, and in no way to identify families, some families as in trouble, some families not as in trouble, who just happened to be wanting to learn a little bit. It was like the great leveler. Everybody was the same here. So we're much more conscious about making sure that there wasn't anything boneheaded that we might do by accident that made some people feel welcome and others feel not. Some people feel better than others. We wanted it all to be, let them work it out. Let's just support what happens here. The families also taught us that if we can get them started early, when they're the hungriest, and typically that was with the prenatal families or the families with infants, once they would complete a developmental play group with a certain group of other infants and other moms or dads, that when that was done, they were hungry for the next thing, because of course the reality was the kids kept growing. The parents needed to keep learning, and we hadn't thought of it that way. It was the developmental track was, of course, our big brainiac driving force, but it also happened to be exactly the best guideline for what the parents were going to tell us they needed. So we developed programming based on the developmental progression of children and parents, some of whom stayed together in our services over years and kind of grew up with each other and brought their next kids back. So the families taught us what they needed. Well, that was obviously common sense, but it was very humbling when you think your job is to know it all. So it was a real eye-opener that your client is going to tell you what she wants, and then you respond to that. So I'm quite aware that I sound like a jackass saying this, but it was it's kind of, oh, I get it. She's the expert. She'll tell me what I need to find out to teach her so she can do her job as a mom. So Baby Bungalow really became a kind of a petri dish, in my opinion. So for our agency to literally listen to our consumers as the designers of our services, and us to remain committed to the science behind it and create a model and embed science in a family-friendly setting, and then grow with the parents and mobilize those services all over the county, I would say it's pretty magical. It's sort of smart business and it's kind of magical all at the same time. All of that is this movement in a wellness-based, y'all come, anybody's eligible kind of direction, borrowing from the rapidly developing brain stuff of the kids and the hungry for information and support needs of the parents. We got a really good quality parent education service for fathers. Now this is a classic example of making a decision to go to an underserved population, fathers, but very much in the spirit of the old agency, fathers who are in trouble. And we developed some really hardcore, very rich long-term parent education for fathers who needed to demonstrate to a judge that they were safe to return the children to. Very much the way of the old agency, but adopting fathers is our target. While we were doing that, we found out about this national program called Boot Camp for New Dads. And what it was is a half-day, one-time session for first-time expectant fathers. And so we got that launched in partnership with the local birthing hospitals and saw a real difference between those two populations. More likely to be middle-class dads coming because their wives said you're going, as opposed to the fathers who a judge says you're going. Over time, we kept thinking that those dads from the boot camp class once the babies were born, would join their wives and their girlfriends and start coming to our baby bungalow classes, which were already in place. Start signing up for our home visitation parents as teachers. We thought we got this all set. We're just adding this little element where dads get their own little dads-only class, where graduates bring their babies back and teach the boot camp class with babies in the room, so dads don't hold a doll in the class, they hold a squirming little baby. We thought they'd just sign up. Well, they didn't. I think we stumbled into a gender studies issue here, and we even did a little research back about 10 or 12 years ago when we talked to moms in a focus group in Baby Bungalow and said, what do you think about the idea of intentionally incorporating dads into the Baby Bungalow classes? And the moms as a whole said, we think that's a great idea. At the same time, we talked to the dads in the boot camp class and said, what do you think about dads joining their girlfriends and wives and fiancés in the Baby Bungalow classes versus having some dads-only stuff? And they said, no, we want our own. So we had dads tell us, in their own polite but pretty candid ways, there's a kind of learning we're better able to do about this stuff called raising kids that we feel like we're completely ignorant about when it's dads only, as opposed to women in the room who we happen to see as knowing more than we do anyway. In this last year, we found another funding source to help us borrow from the Baby Bungalow design of the developmental play groups, but attach it as an extension of our boot camp class for first-time dads, so that when the baby is born, those dads bring their babies and come back to dads and babies only developmental play groups, and we've been doing this for about 4 or 5 months now. 3 consecutive days leading up to the Christmas holidays themselves, we convert a little building that we happen to have. It's our bungalow where our Baby Bungalow program operates out of. We convert it into what amounts to a toy store. And when it is fully fleshed out with all of these donations that we solicit or come at us from all different directions, that we, by the way, frame to people to say, this is what we need, this is what we don't need. We don't need big toys, so that we got 2 big toys and 1 million little toys, and 2 kids are going to score big and everybody else gets something less. And we also don't need toys of violence. It'll really guide what people would give us, with an emphasis on something that would nurture child development. Meanwhile, we've got all of our staff working with all of their clients and consumers to identify down to the individual family how many children they have, what the ages of the children are, what their sex is, that kind of information. And then we work with our staff to schedule shopping appointments for the families, so that on each of these 3 days, when the holiday store is in operation, we've got families from different programs all over our agency arriving here for their scheduled shopping appointment, where we've already got a registration table, we're expecting them, we've got a volunteer personal shopper to assign to the parent, we've got information that says Mrs. X has got 3 children, a 6-year-old girl and a 3-year-old boy and an infant girl. So, and by that time we know how to treat equitably all children. So depending upon what we accumulate, every child gets 1 large toy and 2 medium-sized toys and a stocking stuffer. So the parents they're doing the shopping for their children.
The angel tree is a tree that we put in our lobby, and we get it up the week before Thanksgiving, so we give the employees a good amount of time to donate, and we reach out to 2 organizations, one of which is the Champions for Children, and we put tags on this tree, and each tag has a specific item that we ask employees to donate, and they vary from arts and crafts, educational toys, sports, watches, dolls. One year we were looking to reach out to organizations that had a large impact into our community, and I was introduced to them by a colleague here at Cineverse. So we reached out to Champions for Children, and I think we are on year 10 now that we have been supporting them. My interest is the fact that who we are today as adults is largely impacted by what we were surrounded with as children. And I think that Champions for Children sees that, understands that, and knows that it's not just important for counseling for children, but it's also important to counsel parents, because that's who these children are going to be with. So they look at it as a whole, and they provide the counseling for both the children and the parents. So at this time, we have been supporting the holiday store at Champions for Children, and basically what they do is they ask different organizations, different companies to provide certain items. They give us those items. They exclude any items that are guns, anything violent. So that's another thing that we thought was very interesting. And we then collect these toys and deliver them to Champions for Children. What they do is then they take these items and they separate them into age-appropriate aisles, so to speak, and parents get to come in that are part of this program, and they shop free of charge for these items. And why that's so important to us is because we know that who better to know a child than their parents? So they get that opportunity to go pick their gift, and it's even wrapped for them. So when they go home, all they have to do is put it under their Christmas tree. I think this benefits the parents because as we see this time of the year, there's a lot of feeling that you can't do anything, and especially for these parents that have been through a lot, as well as these children, the holiday store provides that opportunity for a parent to feel empowered. We have estimated that on a yearly basis, we give between $4,000 to $8,000 in toys. So what we do is we have a set amount that the Cineverse Employee Association allows me to have, and what we do is we go out and purchase the items that we generally see are not the ones that we receive. For example, they may be higher in price, some leapfrogs, and so we purchase those, and then we take the other items that are brought in from the employees, and then they get delivered to Champions for Children.
We have just a few over 100 employees at this agency. About 20% of those are part-timers and the rest are full-timers, but a little over 100. The size of our budget is a little bit over $5 million. It's about $5.3 million. And I can tell you that almost exactly $800,000 of that $5.3 million we have to raise privately. Special events, major gifts, checks in the mail, wills and bequests, some grant writing, foundation support, that kind of thing. So for me, that's a sizable private fundraising goal. Where our money comes from is, that is not privately raised. The rest of it is primarily governmental sources or quasi-governmental sources. So we have relationships with our local Children's Services Council that derives its cash flow from ad valorem taxes in the local community. We have a funding relationship with our Healthy Start Coalition, which is part of a statewide system organized around maternal child health and early childhood. Then we have some targeted relationships with our Early Learning Coalition of Hillsborough County that is focused on early learning settings and child care centers, as well as some foundations that are particularly interested in the work that we do. The majority of our funding